And Charles, do you by chance have a headset that you could throw on? Earphones? Yeah. Okay. It's looking okay. Yep. It's looking good now, Charles. Yeah, that looks great, Michael. Perfect. I'm on YouTube and I've got a 3D capture going.
Done a lot of stuff in terms of teaching from inside virtual reality. I was lucky enough to see Wendy's example lesson for Victory XR recently too, and obviously Michael's been doing some great stuff for a long time now. So it seemed like a great great team to bring together to discuss this concept of teaching from inside VR. Which is something that a lot of people are talking about right now with the pandemic and the remote working. So it does give me great pleasure to introduce the stellar lineup that I've got with me today, and thank all three of you for giving me a small slice of your time wherever you are in the world, and whatever time it is. It's like 9 p.m. here in Dubai right now. So there we go. So Charles, let's just start with you now. Charles, you exploded onto the VR education scene last month with this was the where is it? This one. I think it was VR Scout. Proclaimed world's greatest teacher delivers VR maths lesson inside Half-Life Alex. Boy, was that a headline that made me click that story. Tell us a little bit about this, and also how it's impacted you with the amount of press attention that this received.
Sure. Well, it was amazing. I taught that one lesson kind of just as like a gag for my students, and I thought it'd be funny, and I thought they'd enjoy it. And then, I thought it was good enough to post on Reddit, and that's where I think it really took off, and then everyone really found it. And it has just been like the most surreal experience because, I'm just like a random teacher from San Diego, and I do have a VR headset in my classroom, and I use it a lot with my kids. But just out of nowhere, suddenly like I was all over, and I had to talk to like I got interviewed by all these different news organizations, and I've been on like podcasts and things, and it's just been such a wild ride.
That's amazing, man. So how long have you been exploring sort of VR in education or immersive technology in general?
Sure. In education, I'd say the last couple years. We use this thing. Teachers have like donors choose, which is basically, I don't know, GoFundMe for teachers.
Yeah.
And yeah. I just as like a wish list project, like this is not at all in need. Just if I can get it funded, let's see what happens. I asked for a Oculus Rift and a PC, like a gaming PC for my classroom, because I'd already been using them at home for like fun. But I think there's a lot of ways this could be educational, and I got it crazily funded. And since then, I've just been experimenting with all these different ways to use it to like integrate into like my regular curriculum, because I teach middle school 7th and 8th graders, and I teach every subject. So it's actually pretty open because since I do teach every subject, there's so many great history and science and math and English implications for it.
Sure. And although you've kind of hit the headlines with what you did with Half-Life Alex, you've been using a range of different applications to teach, particularly during the school closures. And there's some brilliant stuff on. If you're not already subscribed to Charles's YouTube channel, I heartily recommend it. Some great stuff teaching from inside Tilt Brush, and this is my favorite. I love this image here. This is a pirate themed maths lesson from inside Rec Room. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So actually, it was honestly, I want to say all the attention to that one Half-Life video is what inspired me to be like, maybe I should make more videos. I mean, in a little bit, probably I would have done it anyway, since we're working from home, and I thought it'd be a fun little hobby to explore, like see how much I can do. But yeah, I've been using a ton of Rec Room and Tilt Brush to pre-record lessons for my students, especially and even to teach live to students. And my goal is to get so like practice at it that I can like just naturally almost be like a wizard inside of as I'm teaching live. And sorry, what was the question again?
No, I'm particularly interested in terms of Rec Room. Like, have you?
Yes.
You've delivered stuff from inside Rec Room, but have you had students in there with you?
I actually have. If you check out my channel, in the last couple of weeks, I posted a video. So again, another really cool thing of brief 15 minutes of fame is I'm connecting with other teachers that have been using VR, and I met this guy, Tyrone, who works in Texas. And he also he's a high school teacher, using VR a lot. And we only met during, on VR in this pandemic. And since then we started collaborating on lessons. And recently he helped me teach a scientific revolution, which is what my class is learning. He helped me like co-teach a scientific revolution, just this whole immersive, like fun experience. And, is that me or no? That feedback?
It was Wendy. It's fine. I've just unmuted you for the moment, Wendy.
It helped me. He helped me co-teach this whole lesson in VR with students, and it was just the coolest thing. And like, we actually only used his high schoolers for that because for some reason his school they have Oculus multiple students. And then like during the quarantine, I guess they like passed few them out to students. So regretfully, I do not have many students with an Oculus at home. So I didn't get to teach live to my students like in VR, both of us in VR yet. Like I've only done, the like I'm in VR and they're watching me on a 2-dimensional screen. But it went so well, is what I want to say. Like us with those high schooler students who, played such a good, we're our beta testers for that lesson. And I'm definitely going to use it again next year once we're in the classroom. And I'll just set it up as like a small group station because now I have like 2 or 3 headsets that I can keep in my classroom, and I'll just have like groups of 3 students run through it. So it'll be like 10 cycles.
Sure. Well, thanks for being here, Charles. Next to Charles, we have, I'm going to unmute you now, Wendy. We have the one and only Wendy Martin, the only person that I can think of that's ever taught in holographic form. And I'm sure somebody that if you're familiar with from the amazing and award-winning Victory XR apps. For those that aren't aware, obviously the frog dissection is the most infamous and the original Victory XR dissection experience, but there is now a whole range of Victory XR dissection apps, all of which that star you, Wendy, don't they?
Yes, we do. We have quite a library of apps and programs now.
So do you want to just tell us a little bit about how you got involved with Victory?
So I've been a teacher in the classroom going on this was my 21st year that I just finished up. And Steve Grubbs, who is, in charge of the Victory XR, actually I had his kids in high school. So I've known Steve through his children, and Steve came up with this idea to use both VR and AR to try and create STEM curriculum. And so he wanted to start with various science programs. And like I said, I had his kids in school, and I was lucky enough that he chose me. He asked me if I would like to be involved in it. And so our Victory XR products have kind of gone through this evolutionary process. It started out as we used a GoPro and just created 360 videos. I would go to different places, national parks, those sorts of things, and I would give a little, 10, 20-minute lesson, and we would videotape it, and then people could actually, use this curriculum in their classroom. And as we continued to do more and more and more, we started to come up with the idea of, creating these virtual dissections. And so we've done a cat, we've done a pig, we've done a shark, we've done a squid, a starfish, the frog. We are working with Carolina Biological. They are selling our products to teachers all over the country. And then we just continued. I mean, this whole idea of using virtual reality just started to steamroll. And so we then came up with the idea of creating our XR Academy. And that is what we're currently working on. We are developing, and our modelers are actually creating a classroom that we will be using. And yep, there's a picture of one of the classes. We are in the process of creating and science labs, and we will be using them to develop this academy. And in this XR Academy, we will be offering a wide variety of classes. And of course, one of the classes, will be a science and anatomy type class. And I've been lucky enough, like Charles said, that he hasn't yet had the chance to be in the setting with students. I have had that opportunity, and it's amazing to be able to actually be in this virtual classroom with students from all over the country, and to be able to teach them in that setting was amazing.
And I was lucky enough to be in one of the I don't know whether you call it example lessons or the demonstration sessions that Wendy hosted and the Victory team hosted a few weeks back. And if you go on my website, you will see a full write-up of that, including some of the this photo on the left-hand side here, for example, is one that I took. And for me, as I said in the article, it really was the evolution of a dream, of what some of the stuff that some of the demos and some of the experiences that we've tried to put together here inside Engage over the years by myself and the late Chris Long and obviously Mr. Madsen, who's probably I don't know where he's gone. He's floating around somewhere. But for me, what made it really special, Wendy, was the integration of the spatial audio, and also the ability for the students to working therefore in groups and to interact with elements in small groups within the space. I think that's the game changer, really, isn't it?
I do too. I mean, you know, I obviously, it was an anatomy lesson that I taught. And so, you know, science is so hands-on, and the ability to be able to reach into the body and pull the stomach out and then hand the stomach off to a student and have them turn it around in their hands and manipulate it. And then I would have one that I was holding, and I would talk a little bit about its structure and its function. And, you know, each of my students, I gave each of them, you know, the organ that we were talking about. And so that hands-on component was amazing.
Yeah.
For them, and you know, for them to be able to look at it and turn it and see it and be able to touch the things that I'm talking about.
And the other thing I really liked. The other thing I really liked about what you were doing, Wendy, was the use of the new sticky notes feature.
Oh yeah, I love the sticky notes.
Using that to allow both yourself to share information, but also for students to be able to capture content. Absolutely brilliant. What we'll do, guys, just to keep the pace going, I have got queued up in my files on my tablet. I've got footage of Charles teaching inside Half-Life Alyx. I've got the footage of Wendy delivering that example lesson. What I'll do is I'll shuffle those to the end of the session, at the end of the event today, and then we'll jump into a different space. I'll put up a cinema screen the size of a planet, and I'll stream them for everybody at the end. I just want to move on quickly now, though, and just welcome my good friend Michael McDonald. Michael, it's great to have you back. It's been some time since this picture behind me up here, which was from World VR Day. If you remember, we did the 6 hours straight for Bob Fine as part of World VR Day back in, I think it was November. And Michael, your session was absolutely rammed, the one you hosted inside the Oxford Library. And you're obviously somebody that's got a wealth of experience teaching inside VR. Those that don't know you, do you want to just give a little bit of a background on Gold Lotus and the work that you've been doing teaching languages inside virtual reality?
Sure, yeah. Thanks, Steve, for the introduction. And I must just say, it was rammed, not because of me, but because of that beautiful setting, which was the Oxford Bodleian Library. That's the real reason I think they were there, because it was really like high kind of quality location to be in and really kind of set the scene for the future of education, really. But yeah, my name's Michael McDonald, founder of the Gold Lotus Project. A bit of the background, I'm a kind of keen language learner, always have been, started from about 5-6 years old when my mum enrolled me on some after school French classes. And I'll come back to that, and I want to get under the kind of skin with the fellow kind of professionals and experts here with me about, you know, those kind of early days and how we can impart that enthusiasm onto younger children and students, because I really think it's often underestimated. But yeah, studied German at university, French as well, lived abroad in a few countries, currently in Italy. So languages has always been, you know, a key for me to explore opportunity and to, you know, just kind of express myself professionally as well. So thankfully, VR arrived a few years ago, at least kind of more commercially outside the laboratories. And to think that 10 years ago I used a dictionary to study German at university, and now, you know, we've got our smartphones, which are basically windows into other worlds, the English-speaking world, you know, it's one kind of field, and that's beautiful to be able to give people that ticket to travel anywhere and begin to take that step closer to fluency as well. And now, of course, with the devices like the Oculus Quest, which I'm wearing now, 6 degrees of freedom, and I can look under this table, and that kind of unravels a whole potential when we think about prepositions. The hand sanitizer is on or slightly floating above the table, or it could be under or beside. We can begin to provide a context to the way that we teach. So that's it. That's a bit of background to what I'm doing, and Gold Lotus is the kind of the brand behind this consulting that I offer to schools as well.
And another event that we shared the stage on recently was this event, Michael, that you put together. This was obviously you're British, but you're based in Italy, where the COVID pandemic hit very, very hard, very early. And yeah, do you want to just give us a little bit of background on this event, which partly took place here inside Engage, I think, and then the lion's share was inside Alt Space, or was it all inside Alt Space?
No, it was a 24-hour continuous event, and most of it, yes, was in Altspace, 2 hours in Rumi, and I think 3 or 4 inside Engage. But yeah, it was just a great opportunity to kind of, experiment. I'm, yes, a teacher, but I'm also very much a learner and a student of this technology as well. So I just wanted to push myself a little bit to the limit of, saying, well, okay, what would happen in 24 hours? It was more kind of a social experiment as opposed to particularly an English learning experience as well. So yeah, that's kind of interesting to have invited those people along, get their input, and just really just to try and spread the word about this technology, because whether you're on a 2D or not, computer or the headset, and I think we might be touching on this later as well, Steve. For me, it doesn't really matter. It's this next level, this connection with other people, the social element, and how we can tie that all into a better learning experience in whatever form that is. So yeah, just wanted to try to
and this was a fundraising event as well, man, wasn't it? So
it was, yeah.
I hope that the fundraising side of it was successful for you.
It was, yeah, just over €2,000 raised. There's it wouldn't be Italy without a little bit of bureaucracy and red tape. So we did actually transfer all of the money last month to the account of the Red Cross in Italy, in Lecce, in southern Italy, and we'll be putting that out there on the page there, the GoFundMe page for everybody to see. But yeah, that went a very long way. Just a bit of background, if you consider that a protective suit and gloves and everything for these volunteers, and I underline that word volunteers, is around about €40. And that's, that money really, really did go a long way. So appreciate everybody's attention and time, and of course donations if you did. Thank you very much.
Oh, no, an amazing job for you to organise that, Michael. I've got one last question for you, Michael. Did you actually did you personally yourself do the full 24 hours?
I did. Unfortunately, I don't have a twin brother or alter ego or doppelganger that could have kind of filled in for me. So that was pretty.
No, but I mean, you didn't tag out and let somebody host for 4 or 5 hours while you had to sleep or anything. You did 24 hours straight.
No, and I remember talking to Daniel and Laurel, the co-founders of the Educators in VR community before it, and I was saying to him, you know what, actually, I think it would daunt me less doing like a kind of a week-long bike ride around the perimeter of France or Switzerland or something than doing this, because the thought of staying awake for 24 hours without any kind of dare I say, alcohol involved was something that did scare me quite a little bit. But it worked. And, in the end, if people can stay in hospitals working under those stressful conditions for 18, 24, 36 hours, then what I'm doing is just a drop in the ocean. So, yeah.
Fair play, man. Really, really ready for that. Absolutely amazing. So we're going to move on to the actual sort of panel discussion part of the session today. I've got a few questions which I've already sent across to my distinguished panelists, and we're going to start with this one, which is what platforms do you think make the best options for teaching from inside VR? Obviously, you've all got experience from different platforms, different tools. Perhaps we can find some commonality that exists between these platforms and features that we think are beneficial in terms of teaching from inside VR. So, Charles, let's start with you. You've had some experience testing out some unique platforms which aren't necessarily aimed at teaching.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of decent options for teaching inside VR. Nothing is the standard out perfect platform yet, unfortunately. But the 3 that I've been using the most, I mean, I mentioned a lot of these already, is Tilt Brush. It's one player. It has a third-person camera, and there's a lot. It's an art program originally. Probably a lot of the VR people here are aware of it, but it's like a simple art program that lets you import and pull up files. So I think it's really, like, for a teacher that's just doing, like, kind of just turning what I used to do, live into VR. It's a really easy transition, right? I can like summon worksheets or slides, slap them up huge, draw on them, that sort of thing. I think that's great. Rec Room is currently my other #1 recommendation because it's just so accessible. And that's what the early teaching in VR is gonna, realistically, it's gonna need to be something that you can do, access from a variety of mediums, not just like everyone owns, this one device. So Rec Room, I love that kids can join or people can join on, their iPhones, their iPads, in VR, normal PCs. That's the sort of device agnosticism I'm looking for. And again, you have so much freedom to create stuff in there, kind of in like that, VR dream way we all hoped it would be. And then Half-Life Alex, hilariously enough, is just the highest quality in VR writing I've ever had. And I really think that they have the best, physics system. So I'm imagining like a fun science lesson in there one day. But they only released the ability to make custom apps like this week. So before this week, very limited, just like as like a whiteboard simulator fun thing. But these days, especially if, some modders who have more time and skill set than me make like cool rooms designed for learning, I think that could be really powerful.
One thing you kind of skimmed over it there, but one thing that you've done with Tilt Brush, which when I saw that on your channel, I was like, that's genius. It's the simplest thing, but the thought to input to turn your files, like say a worksheet, or even like squared paper to do math on, and turn that into an image that you then import in the media in Tilt Brush, and then literally put it up and write on it. It's brilliant outside the box thinking, Charles, and I had a big grin on my face when I first saw that video of you doing that. Really clever.
Thank you.
Wendy, what would you say? Obviously, the live lesson that you did inside the Victory Academy is obviously built inside Engage. Have you had experience of other platforms?
No, I mean, honestly, the only platform I have used up to this point is Engage. That's who we've been developing our lessons through. And working, Engage has, because obviously Engage has so many options in terms of locations and, the IFXs and the assets, things that we can, that we can create and design. But Engage has also been very well with us, because they have allowed us to create our own assets and use in Engage. And so, we are currently, like I said, we're developing our own set of classrooms and our own sets, our own body organs, and any class that we want to teach, we're going to be developing our own assets for that. But being to use within Engage has been amazing. So it's a mix of things that Engage offers, but then things that we are bringing in. I'm really interested in trying Rec Room, like Charles was saying.
Yes,
I have been in there as just to check it out, and I'm kind of interested to see how I could utilize that too.
As Charles mentioned, one of the great things.
Engage.
Go on, Wendy.
I was just going to say, Engage. I am the most familiar with. So.
Well, I was going to say, in terms of Rec Room, as Charles mentioned, it's the equitable access. Rec Room will run on just on an iPad. It will run on a PlayStation. You don't have to have a headset. So right now, you lower the entry bar to get them into that space. Very much. I mean, again, though, that's something that I've talked to people about in terms of Engage. There are people sitting in the audience right now who will be accessing these sessions just in 2D mode. They'll be accessing just from a PC, which obviously is not as immersive as having a headset on, but it gets you in the door. It opens the door, and it opens your eyes to this new world where there's tigers and space probes, and we're sitting having a group discussion on Mars. Michael, you've used a range of platforms. You use Engage, you've used Roomy, you've used AltSpace. I'm not going to ask you to. Obviously, we're sitting here inside Engage right now. I'm not going to sit here and get you to say, right, which one's your favorite? What is it? What? Because Madsen's about somewhere and he'll get cross.
Yeah, I'm worried. And I've got a tiger behind me as well.
Yeah.
I'm omnipresent, Steve.
Which what is it about all of those platforms? Talk about the commonality of them. Is there something that draws you to each of them, that maybe a common theme, a common thread, something that benefits your delivery of your lessons?
Oh yeah, it's the social element, and I know some platforms like Engage. I don't know if.
Did his headset?
Roomy don't by document simulations, and but it's that coming together of people, and particularly as a language teacher. That's what I'm trying to do. There we go. I think I'm back. So as a language teacher, it's the coming together of people, and that's the common thread running through it. Obviously, it's very difficult for people to meet, physically, but virtually we can do that. So that's what all the platforms offer. In terms of the best, which is quite a big word. Because it depends on the learning goals needed. What's the point? What are we trying to do here? So, for example, I love coming in to engage with a 360 video room. Boom, you just stream a video from YouTube like we did last night. At the drop of a hat, you can be immersing yourself in the Serengeti or in a Venezuelan waterfall. That's what we did yesterday at one of the events. I love that. I love the fact that you can bring in these eye effects very, very easily and quickly. I love the also it's quite polished spaces as well. So there's the tiger, quite polished space as well. Alt space. Vibrancy, and really, really love that kind of bumping into people that you might not cross paths with, just kind of passing through. Rumi, again, offers other features as well. Like, for example, they've got the CCK, the content creation kit, as they call it. You put it into Unity, you bring in some models from SketchUp, and you can spit it out the other end, and you can create, quite easily your environment in which you can immerse yourself in for whatever teaching goals you have. So, and I must say as well, talking about the accessibility of Rec Room, for example, let's not forget WebVR and Mozilla Hubs, because that's something I've really been getting my teeth into recently.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I love that. Mozilla Hubs.
Who said that was me?
Mozilla Hubs. I played with that a bit. I should have plugged that too. That's
a huge amount of creativity and content creation, which is really something I advocate a lot. It's all about getting the students' hands on, getting them to shape their learning experience to some extent as well. So,
my recommendation for another one to check out if you haven't already is Frame by Gabe Baker. Some of you may know Gabe. He's been a long time involved with the VR education space. Worked for a number of different on a number of different projects, but he's been toiling away at this web VR multi-user web VR space called Frame, which is completely free to access. Very similar to Mozilla Hubs. Works on any device because it's web-based. Definitely worth checking out. You can do some quite cool stuff with that. So moving on then. So we've kind of touched upon this question a little bit already. Through the natural flow of conversation, which is how much does the lack of access to VR hardware degrade the impact that VR teaching can make? So, we talked about the importance right now of equitable access, for the fact that we need platforms that will allow non-VR users as well as VR users as much as possible, particularly in an era of school closures, where we're in a position where, we're all sitting here, the four of us are sitting here with headsets, but it doesn't mean that our students are all sitting at home with headsets. But how much do you feel that it actually degrades the impact that teaching in VR has if your students don't have a headset? So Wendy, for example, your lesson that you delivered was very much about being hands-on with the human cadaver. But if your students don't have access to their arms, then they would not be able to interact with that in the same way.
I remember we first started wanting to bring computers into the class. We wanted to be able a one-on-one, each student has a computer, and not every student had a computer. So there were things we wanted to do, but we couldn't yet, as not access. But as things continued on, we as a school figured out a way to get
Chris, I keep losing Wendy's sound. Are you hearing her?
Yep, I'm seeing that as an internet connection there, unfortunately.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
We can, Wendy, but you drop in and out, unfortunately.
It could, I'm not sure. And I do realize that at this point, not everyone is access to the VR hardware. The cost issue. I do think that as we continue, as VR becomes more and more prominent, available, I think schools will at least figure out ways to have equipment. Well, because we're just kind of starting, this is kind of a pioneering move. We're just kind of starting with all this VR teaching. And so, yeah, there's definitely going to be some kinks because not everybody has access. But
Sure.
I'm looking, a year or two down the road. I don't think just based on what I've seen past, I don't think it's going to be as much of an issue.
Sure. Michael, Charles, anything to add?
I mean, I'm going to say a lot of the same things I think she was saying. And like, okay, so I'm currently working in schools, and literally I still see schools that do not have one-to-one computers, which should be a basic pen and paper necessity for kids. So, I mean, this is like the larger question about, schools need more funding in general. What I will say though, is that an Oculus Quest doesn't cost significantly more than a Chromebook. Like, they're almost in the same budgetary range. And I think it'll go the same, at least what I've noticed in schools, like with computers, is like, at first you're like, oh, we have like very few computers. And then it's like, now the teacher has a computer. Now we have enough for a small group of kids. Finally, like once stuff has come along, there'll be enough one-to-one. And, we're still at the early stages, like Wendy was saying. But, right now, I think that it does degrade, obviously, the lack of access to VR hardware does degrade the impact that VR teaching can make. But I don't think it's unrealistically unaffordable, I mean, for schools to afford, like 5 quests. In fact, my current school, like because of the things I was doing in my room, they were willing to buy like 1 quest per classroom. And now we can like put those together to have like, like a small group set. And honestly, maybe that's the ideal way to integrate VR with its current, limited, I'd say, software, is like a small group. And then you have like 3 other groups, and you're doing rotations. Like, that's such a natural way to integrate it already that is pretty affordable for, most American classrooms that can afford basic. But again, this is like America budgets compared to, I don't know. We do have low budgets. So
Yeah.
Michael, obviously, the stuff that you're doing, as you mentioned before, like you would come into a space like this, and you might be talking about the fact that the hand soap is on the table rather than under the table. That I would imagine that doesn't that doesn't as matter as much if the person or the people, the students that are joining you, have got the headset or not. It's more about access to the spaces and the creativity. Am I right? Or am I wrong?
Yeah, no, and this feeds in actually nicely for the previous question, which is what is the best in inverted commas platform. Well, it depends on the needs of the student. It depends what you're trying to convey at any one time. It depends on the context. And again, when we talk about this question, does it degrade the impact of VR teaching? It could change the impact of teaching so what I mean by that, and you just touched on it there, if you've got a lecture, 50, 60 people in a room that need to kind of more passively take part, listening and stuff, well, actually maybe the 2D experience on a desktop could actually be better than in VR, because you can just toggle away from that 2D screen. You can make some notes, Google document open, boom, you just write some notes in there, and that becomes a lot harder in VR because you've got to lift up the headset. Maybe the capabilities aren't there to actually make some notes, unless you're of course in Alex Half-Life, and you just scroll it on the dirty Windows, Charles.
Yeah.
Very nice to demonstrate. But that aside, that's the exception. But you get my point. It depends on what is the actual the purpose of the lesson. So big lecture, maybe not that important, but if you're talking about small group work, if you're talking about particularly language activities where you're getting people to do tasks, role plays in a restaurant type of environment, a cafe, one person plays the waiter, the other person plays the client, the customer, then you really need to be getting the headset on, hopefully fully immersive VR. But what I will say is that I personally, this might be an unpopular decision, feel free to set the tiger on me if this is indeed an unpopular decision, but I don't want to see one device per student. I don't want to walk into a classroom and see every student with a headset until we get to a point where we understand, okay, what's the purpose of the technology? Is the technology gathering dust the time in the week in the cupboard because they don't know how to use it correctly? I think we need to get under the skin of what do the teachers want, what do the students want, how do we balance that with the parents' expectations, with the budgetary requirements of the school? All of these types of conversations need to be had. And when schools say to me in Italy, like for example, where I live and where I'm constantly going around to schools, they say, well, yeah, we want to get 20 headsets. I'm actually kind of saying, well, no, I don't recommend that at this point. Let's get a few in the shop, make sure we understand what we're doing in them first, and then begin to scale it up.
And build scale, yeah, definitely. And I think what's important is the fact that, pedagogically, in terms of, especially in terms of digital pedagogy, we have evolved. We all understand now that, you shouldn't have one device and a queue of kids, but there are other ways that you can integrate smaller numbers of devices and still make impact. There's a variety of strategies. Yeah. And as long as you aren't in that, in that paradigm where, they're all stood, you've got 10 kids stood watching one kid, or waiting for their turn. You know, you can still make an impact with a more limited amount of technology. We're going to jump to this question here, guys, which is so it's essentially my panel discussion variation on my usual "what's next for you" kind of question. So how would you like to evolve your use of VR for teaching and learning even further? What's next for you? You've all three of you have innovated in different ways. What is next for you professionally, or what would you love to see? You know, what would it be? What would be an absolutely amazing addition to the VR education space that could, you know, elevate what you're already doing and how you're already innovating even further? And I'm happy to cast this one wide to even to the tiger, if the little tiger wants to answer. He's next to you.
He took your chair.
He did. Oh, I can leave the stage if you want. I'll tell you
Got
what.
a little
one
lap
word.
cat over here.
One word, bagel. Let me elaborate. As an English teacher, what I want to see is, and actually this kind of, it comes back to why I love this technology at this point, is because you can, as a language learner in the past, I really wanted to get to a country in which they spoke the language I was learning. So I was kind of a student of German, and finally I could get to German during my university years. And I jumped on the train, and I always remember this, going on the train from airport Schönefeld in southeast Berlin all the way to the center. And there was an advert above me for dental floss. And Zahnseide is the German word for dental floss. I've never needed to know that word apart from telling stories like this in VR. And why that's important is because I was absorbing that in the context. I could see the picture of the lady putting it in between her teeth. And that's where VR is like, I'm in my element, because I can take them to the Serengeti and see creatures like this. So when I think of the next level, and Chris, if you can hear us up there, because I know you're around. We want smells. We want touch. Chris has been talking a lot recently, and with Alex at Riva, I think pronounced that, over the photogrammetry. That's amazing. Yeah. Love that. Digital twins, but we need to take the language learner into the New York deli. He can hear the high quality audio around them. They then are given a bagel. They order that bagel in English. They then feel the sesame seeds on the tips of their fingers because of the sensory experience. And then as they crack open that bagel, they get that kind of smell of the yeasty hot bread in their nostrils. That's the level I want to get to, because that's real life. So there we go, Chris. Let's put that on the development roadmap, please. Thank you very much.
I was trying to see if I can find one of those really fancy photogrammetry ones that you were showing me, Mr. Madsen, but maybe we'll do that afterwards.
Can I?
Charles,
can I add to that? So, you know, right now the best, like I absolutely agree with what Michael's saying, and kind of like my own personal version of that is off. So I'm trying to learn Spanish in a continuous 10-long-year journey that I'm on, and one of the things I do is I play a lot of video games in Spanish. Because then, like, you know, especially immersive RPGs have just dense amounts of, you know, text that I'm forced to engage with. And I think it's a great way of learning. And, you know, VR would obviously be just the next step above that. It gives me a lot of weird vocabulary, though. Like, you know, I know, like, a lot of magic spells in Spanish while missing, you know, basic kitchen vocabulary. But I guess for me personally, one of my plans for VR and teaching is, with the current levels, like I said, I'm going to keep making videos in VR or teaching live in VR, because again, there are things that you can already do in VR that you can't do in real life, like just spawn cool 3D objects and I immediately have it for the kids to look at it or interact with. But in my classroom, personally, I just think the small group. Like I said, I also don't think one-to-one is at all necessitated by our current state of VR software and hardware. But I do think it has so much potential in just regular, you know, at least middle school, certainly high school classrooms in small groups, or in for like, you know, like a 10-minute hook for a lesson. And then let's take off our headsets and do stuff, you know, on our Chromebooks and on our pen and paper for the other, I don't know, 45 minutes. Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, as a teacher in my own classroom, I'm the same as Charles. My intent is to try and integrate it more in my own teaching. I've already started, you know, the dissections that, I mean, I've already started using those with my students, and so I will small station setup. But actually, within the VR realm, I am so excited at the opportunities, because so much of what I teach in bioanatomy is microscopic, and I am so excited at the prospect of being able to take my students actually into a cell.
Mm.
Maybe I could actually be within a cell teaching the kids, and they can actually see the DNA unraveling and replicating and seeing the amino acids coming in and attaching to each other. They can actually see, you know, an atom. They can see these organelles, because so much of, and I mean, there are models out there. You know, there are YouTube videos and things out there that show these processes and show them in a good way. But the opportunity to be able to put these kids in a microscopic setting and let them witness these processes is going to be amazing. And I'm most excited to develop that type of microbiology.
It is absolutely incredible. I mean, I've worked with GCSE students at my former school, where we put them inside human lungs, and they were learning about the effects of smoking from the inside. You know, you were then able to apply lung cancer to the organs and at differing levels, and see the kind of the corruption and the degradation of the lungs from the inside out. It was incredibly powerful.
Exactly.
Paired with practical activities where, you know, where they were looking at actual goat lungs there in the lab. So, you know, it was bringing the physical science together with the power of virtual reality. Really great stuff. Thank you all. I'm going to hand over to the audience. If anyone in the audience has got a question for any of my guests this evening, then if you're in a VR headset, obviously throw your hand up in the air, and I will, or Mr. Madsen, if he's about somewhere, will unmute you. We got a question down the front.
You need to unmute yourself there.
There we go. Xerocus.
Yep, he's good.
Yeah, you're all good.
Cool. Right. Thank you very much. Very interesting. I have a question to the panelists. So while we were, well, participating as the audience here, we didn't really interact with you, obviously. So, for example, when Michael said something about the marathon inside VR, I wanted to say, wow, or something like that. But I obviously didn't want to raise my hand, unmute myself, and create a sort of disruption to the flow of the panel. And to sort of expand on this question, so when Charles taught inside Half-Life Alyx, what is sort of the opportunity for the audience to be interactive without being disruptive? Because I think that's a kind of important question for teaching, because you need to kind of control the space that you are in, especially if it's many children, and you need to sort of pay attention over time. And so what are the challenges, what are the opportunities, and what are your tools for that? Thank you very much.
So I've been teaching in, sorry, you can go.
I was just going to say, well, you know, the classes that I've been teaching with the students, you know, in form, I've just kind of set parameters at the beginning, just like I would in a normal classroom. You're going to have, you know, if you're teaching inside of a VR room, you're going to have the same type of management or possible discipline issue you could in a classroom. And so I just myself on day, kind of setting my parameters, kind of saying raise your hand type thing, and showing them how to mute and unmute themselves. I haven't had issues yet. I haven't really had too many issues.
Thank you.
I mean, I draw an analogy to, like, currently I'm teaching a lot of Zoom, and that's when I'm teaching, often their voices are muted, but then maybe I'll leave a chat open that I'm watching constantly, like live stream like that. Alternatively, you know, like Wendy said, you can just teach like normal classroom management style. Although VR/simulated experience in general just give you a lot more control, because ultimately you can just mute that one student like in that moment. Muted. So that sort of thing. It's almost like above average.
Yeah,
at the beginning.
Really, really interesting. Sorry, Wendy.
No.
Thanks. Slight delay there. I'll go ahead, Wendy. Okay, go. Okay, yeah. Really great question there. Also, because some other platforms, Rumi, AltSpace, and Hubs, the three tool of you be able to like send up a smiley or a heart or something like that, which kind of takes you potentially a step closer to some kind of interaction of the nature you were talking about. And it's interesting Engage doesn't have that. I don't know if that's kind of a conscious decision. It feels, obviously in real life, in inverted commas, you don't have that capability. You would use your face. And a few days ago, actually, I saw a video with Neos VR, Neos VR, and I think it's available on HTC devices. Yeah, with the lip sync, like full like lip syncing and lip tracking, which is just made it a whole new level. So I think that's potentially where we're going to be going to, is a point where our lips will be tracked and I will see your interaction through the smile or the tightening of your cheekbones.
And you've got
the muscles around your cheekbones.
This week as well, we've seen the unveiling of the XR Space project from Peter Chow, the former founder of HTC. And that again has got, it's got no controllers. You've got the ability to clap and high five, and you've got full face tracking. So you've got a greater degree of I remember teaching. I used to use Minecraft Education Edition. This was back the original version of it before Microsoft bought it. And my trick, if a student was ever messing around inside a Minecraft lesson, is that I would teleport them up into the sky and then freeze them in midair and say, right, I'll let you come down when you promise to behave. And they would be so desperate to get back into the game because they were stuck watching it all unfold behind them. And I could actually do that right now because Engage now has the ability for me to, I could take, for example, let's take Michael. You can be my little guinea pig for this magic trick. So I put a chair up in the sky over there. Let's see if I can reach you to it right there. Now, Michael, watch this. Michael in a seat. Oh, I can't put you in the one up in the sky, Michael, but I can send you to the back of the room. Go to the back of the room.
Here I go.
So you can put him in timeout.
And I could lock him in place there if I wanted to. I won't, but I could lock him in place. I could actually lock all of you in your seats so that you couldn't get up and move around, which obviously is only one aspect of classroom management. But we've got an ever increasing bank of tools inside virtual reality. Some of which, as Wendy was saying, are they're transposed from the real world, and then we've got these other impossible tools like the ability to group mute. Do we have any other questions from the group before we run out? Yes, Carlos. Of course.
Of course.
Buenas noches.
Yeah, buenas tardes. Hello, Charles. ¿Cómo estás, Carlitos?
Bien, y tú?
Muy bien, gracias. Well, a couple of just observations. I noticed that Wendy has Miss Martin as her name. Is that because you're in school and you're used to Miss Martin all the time and everybody's calling you Wendy here?
I know. I actually, I changed my avatar's name to Mrs. Martin when I was teaching my classes, and I haven't changed it. I'm sorry.
No, that's no.
Yeah.
Mrs.
Thing, Martin is my teaching name. Yes.
Yeah. So the other thing that I want to make an observation is that the internet keeps. So Michael, you went out and Wendy went out while they were expressing their thoughts and stuff, and. Are we even care that the internet comes in and out because of the different parts that we live on the planet? Nobody ever talks about that part of it.
How of the percentage of how long I was talking? Percentage was I kind of gone?
No, maybe 15, 20 seconds most.
20 seconds.
And it was just at one time. Whereas Wendy's sound has been in and out throughout. I mean. What I would say, Carlos, is we have talked in the past during CPDinVR events about how Wi-Fi is the great commodity these days. Personally, whenever I'm hosting events, I always make sure I've actually moved my furniture around to plug in an Ethernet cable into my laptop. It's the only time really I ever do that is when I'm hosting these events to try and guarantee that I've got the best bandwidth possible. But we've got the rise of 5G and faster speeds on an annual basis. And I think as those speeds go up, guys, I think you probably all agree that we're not going to face as many issues in terms of connections of this kind and any kind. But I mean, it's a good question in terms of, like, Wendy, how how would that affect you if
It's
this was a lesson that
definitely-
you were teaching, and we
If this
can't
was a
hear
lesson,
everything you're saying?
Oh, it's definitely sure. And there have been times where I have to decide whether I want to teach my class at my high school or come home and teach it. So I'm kind of like you, Steve. I just be in a place where I can get my best connection. And I'm kind of surprised I've been going in and out today, because usually where I'm sitting now in my living room is usually the best internet for me. That's
But it
just
might-
one of those.
What it might be,
It's
Wendy,
one of those things
is the
where
fact
you have to deal with it.
what it might be is the fact that I'm hosting the event from here in Dubai. Whereas, so for example, when I was in your session, which I'm assuming the guys from Victory hosted, you were crystal clear all the way through. You didn't drop a single syllable, let alone a single word. So it's potentially me. Sorry, guys. It's one of the downsides of being in the Middle East is that I'm a bit further away from a lot of you.
I haven't yet had an issue with the internet, dropping when I'm teaching. But if it did, what would I do? I don't know. The same thing. I would figure out something in my normal classroom when technology fails. I would figure out a way to work through it.
As well, if you're talking about an attendance perspective. Oh, sorry. There's a slight delay. It's like you go to the cinema, and in the end, and it's an absolutely valid question, Carlos, and you're right, and particularly as an educator, you don't want to be dipping out of lessons constantly. But you go to the cinema, and there are kind of many pros to that, and people go there because of a much more vivid experience. But then, you kind of you're going to put up with the sticky floor.
Right.
This is pretty ironic.
Ironic, yeah. You froze up again.
There's all. It's ironic. You go to the cinema, you're going to be sitting behind someone with a big head or big hairdo, and or using a smartphone, and or there's going to be popcorn on the back of your seat, and it's going to stain your denim jeans. In the end, there's always a bit of give and take with stuff like that. It's, despite it being an absolutely valid question, but it's something that I guess will improve in the future. Yeah,
definitely.
Steve,
right,
do
guys,
you mind if I make a comment on internet connection?
Only if you tell me where you are.
I'm in a camera right now. I'm getting some YouTube footage, Steve. I'm omnipresent, my friend. One quick, I actually took notes for a week on internet connection, and it's really interesting because I took notes on my phone, on my Zoom calls, and in VR. And it's really interesting because when we're in VR, because we're actually feeling present with other people, we expect it to be like real life. Our brains expect it to be like real life. So when you have an outage or any weirdness in voice in VR, I think it's actually amplified many-fold. Whereas in a phone, you can have bad connections, you can have dropouts, etc., but we just don't care our brain doesn't care as much because we don't expect it. Just an interesting observation I've made over time.
Yeah, no, that is interesting. The psychology of VoIP, as they call it. Right, guys, we have hit time. Apologies if you didn't get to ask your question, but I am conscious of the fact that it's kind of getting late here where I am, and I'm sure some of you have still got work to do today. I do really appreciate you giving up your time. If any of you had questions you didn't get a chance to ask, please do fire them at me or at the panel on social media or via email, and I can always connect you with any of the guests here if you're interested in speaking to them directly. What I'll do is I'll teleport us down onto the surface of Mars, and I'll throw up a giant screen, and then we'll watch some of that video footage that I mentioned before. I've got video footage from all three of the guests with me today, teaching from inside VR to show you. And I'll just say a huge thank you to Michael, to Charles, and to Wendy for taking time out from their busy schedules to be with us. And one more reminder, next month, end of June, will be the 3-year anniversary event. I'm looking at we're thinking about doing 8 hours straight of half-hour sessions, so that's 16 sessions back to back, starting with what will be a you don't want to miss it keynote. I am not going to reveal who it is just yet, but I will let you try and figure it out based on the clues that it is someone you won't want to miss and someone who's never been on CPD in VR before. Someone I've been trying to get for a year, and I've finally got them to agree to come onto the show, which I'm really happy about. So let's jump down onto the surface of Mars. it seems fitting since we're floating above it right now, and then we'll throw up a screen. So, are we all in? Fantastic. Okay, I have got, let's go with a little, I'll show you Wendy's, the showcase of Wendy's lesson from the Victory XR Academy.
Now, let's start with the teeth. Everybody look at the teeth on the oral cavity. Or can you give me an example of a digestive issue that would maybe put you in a hospital or make you have to go see a doctor? Claire, what do you think?
Celiac disease?
Celiac disease. Has anybody ever heard of?
Hey, Steve, are you there? You might be muted.
I was muted, man, sorry. Right, I've got a little clip of Michael in action next. Oh, happy birthday, thank you, Chris.
Happy birthday, Steve.
Is there audio to this?
You're now going to start saying about the Brazilian man who possibly invented the planes. So watch that part, and I'll ask you a question.
Did you know Brazilians think it was a Brazilian who invented the airplane?
Oh,
He's called Santos Dumont.
Okay.
Brazilians say.
What do you
Brazilians
think
say
about
Santos
what you said
Dumont.
there, Nate?
They say the Brazilian says, and that's wrong.
It is. You're right. What is the correct thing to say?
Brazilians say.
Exactly.
Without the S. Yeah.
Fantastic. Good. So you made that mistake, and you do make another mistake very soon. Let's listen. Do you believe?
Michael, I'm going to pause your video there because I've got to jump off in about 60 seconds because I've got a call coming in. Let me just jump quickly to a little chunk of Charles's Half-Life Alyx classic.
It's what we've all been waiting for.
And like these two angles, those are adjacent too, right? They're right next to each other. That's not what we're going for. These two, I'm going to show are identical with this line. Okay, I know that they are vertical angles and they are therefore identical to each other. Oh, uh-oh. Sometimes when I drop things on my floor, I can't reach it because there we go. Moving on. Let's give another example of that though. If these two angles are vertical, did you know that this angle over here is also vertical to this angle over here? And to show they're identical, I'm going to put two lines because I already used the one dash right there. So this angle and this angle are vertical. They are identical to each other. If I told you that this angle over here is, I'm going to make up a number, 75 degrees, you could It's quite a cliffhanger.
You might be muted again there, Steve.
I am indeed. Thank you. I am going to have to jump, Chris. I've got a call coming in. I'm going to leave everybody in your capable hands. Thank you all for joining me this evening and enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe. See you all soon.
Easily tell me that
Happy
this angle
birthday,
over here.
Steve.
What?
All the best,
I'm like,
take
what's that missing angle? What's that red angle over there? Well, it's also 75 degrees, because that. It's over here on tiny screen. How vertical angles work. Okay. Fun, easy. Let's try these out. So, angle ABC and angle XYZ are complementary. Okay, what does complementary mean? Well, as a review, it's angles whose sum equals 90 degrees. The way I remember that is, you know, it's often a right angle is complementary when you put them together, so you'd complement it. What a nice right angle. So structured and sharp and, you know, beautiful. Complement that 90-degree angle. I don't know if that's gonna help you or not, but I do know that these in my problem number one, this is our example problem number one, angle ABC and angle XYZ are complementary. Angle ABC equals 33 degrees. What is the measure of angle XYZ? This seems like a simple, you know, subtraction problem. If we know that together these